Edmund Kemper, infamously known as the Ed Killer, stands as one of the most disturbing figures in American crime. His towering height and high intelligence masked a disturbed mind that harbored dark, violent thoughts. Kemper's story is not just a tale of murder. It is a chilling exploration into the depths of human depravity and madness. His crimes, committed in the early 1970s, continue to haunt criminal psychology and law enforcement. Kemper's life and his heinous acts raise unsettling questions about the nature of evil and the potential for brutality within the human psyche. His interactions with his victims, often young female college students, and the gruesome nature of his crimes add layers of horror to his already complex persona. Kemper's significance in criminal history is underscored by his own awareness and manipulation of his psychological profile during his crimes and subsequent capture. His ability to articulate his motivations and thought processes provides a rare, if horrifying, insight into the mind of a serial killer. Edmund Kemper's early life was marked by a tumultuous family dynamic and psychological strife. Born on December 18, 1948 in California, Kemper was the middle child in a household characterized by marital discord and emotional turbulence. His parents' divorce when he was just 9 years old was a significant emotional blow, one that would start him on a path of psychological deterioration. The young Kemper displayed troubling behavior, including cruelty to animals and dark fantasies about killing his mother. The relationship with his mother, Clarnell Strandberg, was particularly toxic and would later be seen as a critical factor in his psychological development. Described as domineering and abusive, Clarnell's treatment of Kemper was harsh and degrading, contributing to his burgeoning hatred for women. Kemper's size, he stood 6 feet 9 inches tall by his adolescence, contrasted sharply with his feelings of helplessness and inadequacy, feelings that were exacerbated by his mother's relentless criticism. At school, he was an outcast, mocked for his size and his awkward nature. His intelligence, though remarkable, did little to alleviate his social isolation. This combination of intellectual capability and emotional turmoil would later become a deadly concoction. These early experiences laid the groundwork for what would become a series of horrifying acts. Between May 1972 and April 1973, Edmund Kemper embarked on a murderous spree that claimed the lives of 6 young women, all college students, earning him the moniker the Ed Killer. His reign of terror left a lasting scar on the community and instilled fear in the hearts of many. These murders were not just acts of violence, they were ritualistic, marked by post-mortem desecration and dismemberment. Each crime scene bore the hallmarks of meticulous planning and a chilling disregard for human life. Kemper's method was cold and calculated. He would pick up hitchhikers, gain their trust, and then kill them, usually by stabbing or strangulation. His ability to appear harmless and trustworthy made him all the more dangerous. The first known victims, Marianne Pesce and Anita Lucchesa, were picked up by Kemper in May 1972. Their disappearance marked the beginning of a series of gruesome discoveries. He drove them to a secluded area, where he murdered them and later dismembered their bodies. The remote locations he chose ensured that his heinous acts went unnoticed for a time. This pattern of picking up young women, murdering them, and then dismembering their bodies became a horrifying signature of Kemper's during this period. His actions were methodical, leaving little evidence behind. His choice of victims and the method of killing reflected a deep-seated animosity towards women, a sentiment that he had harbored since his troubled adolescence. This hatred was a driving force behind his brutal actions. Kemper's interactions with his victims were paradoxically intimate. He would often engage them in deep conversations, creating a false sense of security. He engaged them in conversation, used his intelligence and knowledge of psychology to manipulate them, and only when they were most vulnerable did he strike. His cunning and deceit were as lethal as his physical actions. This manipulation of trust only added a deeper layer of horror to his crimes, as it betrayed the very human need for connection and safety. The victims' trust in him was their ultimate undoing. The brutality of the murders was compounded by Kemper's post-murder behavior. His actions after the killings were as disturbing as the murders themselves, showcasing a complete lack of remorse and a chilling detachment from his heinous acts. Section 4. The Investigation, Unraveling the Horrors. The investigation into the co-ed murders was a painstaking process that gradually began to focus on Edmund Kemper, thanks primarily to his own mistakes and growing recklessness. His actions, which initially seemed random and untraceable, began to form a pattern that the investigators could not ignore. Initially, the local police were baffled by the gruesome murders and the lack of clear leads. The brutality of the crimes and the apparent lack of connection between the victims made it difficult to pinpoint a suspect. However, as the body count increased, so did the intensity of the investigation. The detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of evidence that slowly began to reveal a chilling picture. Kemper's size and his presence around the local college campuses eventually made him a figure of interest to law enforcement. His imposing stature and frequent appearances near the crime scenes raised suspicions among the officers. Kemper's eventual capture was as unconventional as his crimes. His behavior became increasingly erratic, leading to mistakes that ultimately facilitated his arrest. In April 1973, after killing his mother and her friend, which marked the culmination of his violent spree, Kemper drove to Colorado. This final act of violence was a turning point, pushing him to the brink of his own sanity. Once there, overwhelmed by guilt and perhaps a perverse desire for recognition, he called the police from a phone booth and confessed to all the murders. His confession was detailed and left no doubt about his involvement. This self-report was initially met with disbelief. Kemper was known to the police, but had always been considered more of a gentle giant than a suspect. The officers were stunned by the contrast between his outward demeanor and the horrific nature of his crimes. The confession led to a detailed examination of Kemper's background and previous interactions with law enforcement. Investigators delved into his past, uncovering a history of violence that had been largely ignored. It emerged that Kemper had been institutionalized as a teenager after murdering his grandparents, a fact that had been overlooked or underestimated in its significance in his later behavior. This revelation shed light on the deep-seated issues that had driven him to commit such heinous acts. Kemper's arrest and subsequent interviews provided critical insights into his psyche and the dynamics of his crimes. His willingness to talk about his actions gave investigators a rare glimpse into the mind of a serial killer, helping them understand the motivations behind his brutal acts. Section 5. The Trial, Justice in the Courtroom. The trial of Edmund Kemper was a highly publicized affair, drawing attention not only because of the gruesome nature of the crimes, but also because of Kemper's chillingly calm demeanor and detailed confession. Held in Santa Cruz, California, the trial began in October 1973. Kemper faced 8 counts of first-degree murder, to which he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. This plea was supported by his detailed accounts of voices and compulsions driving him to kill. During the trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including Kemper's own detailed confessions and the physical evidence collected from his car and home. Forensic experts discussed the nature of the wounds inflicted on the victims, linking them conclusively to Kemper's methods. The defense, meanwhile, focused on Kemper's troubled psychiatric history, arguing that his mental illness was so severe that he could not be held fully responsible for his actions. The jury, however, was not convinced by the insanity defense. After a 5-hour deliberation, they found Kemper guilty on all counts. Kemper was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, to be served in the California Medical Facility. Section 6. Aftermath and Impact. The Shadow of Kemper's Crimes. The conclusion of Edmund Kemper's trial did not mark the end of his impact on society or on the fields of criminal justice and psychology. His actions left a deep and lasting scar that continues to be felt in various aspects of our lives. His case has been extensively studied as an example of extreme antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy, providing valuable insights into the mind of a serial killer. These studies have helped shape modern understandings of such disorders, influencing both academic research and practical applications in the field. The detailed confessions and interviews he gave have been used in criminal profiling and in training law enforcement officers on how to interact with and understand the psychological underpinnings of violent criminals. This has led to more effective methods in identifying and apprehending individuals with similar profiles. Kemper's crimes also had a lasting impact on the communities where he lived and killed. The fear and trauma experienced by these communities have led to long-term changes in how safety is perceived and managed. They led to increased security measures on college campuses and heightened awareness about the safety of hitchhiking, which was common at the time. This shift in behavior marked a significant change in societal norms regarding personal safety. His case prompted discussions about the treatment of the mentally ill, particularly those with violent tendencies, and the legal responsibilities of mental health professionals to report potential threats to public safety. These discussions have influenced policies and practices in mental health care, aiming to prevent similar tragedies. Moreover, Kemper's articulate self-awareness and the media's fascination with his case have contributed to a broader cultural discourse about the nature of evil and the human capacity for violence. This discourse has permeated various forms of media, from news reports to fictional portrayals in movies and television. His interviews, often replayed in documentaries and used in psychological studies, continue to chill viewers with their calm descriptions of brutal acts. These interviews serve as a stark reminder of the potential for darkness within the human psyche. This public persona of the intelligent killer complicates traditional narratives of crime and punishment, forcing a reevaluation of the binaries of good and evil. It challenges us to think more deeply about the complexities of human behavior and morality. Lastly, the legacy of Kemper's crimes extends into how serial murders are reported and perceived by the public. The sensational nature of his case has influenced media coverage, often prioritizing shock value over nuanced understanding. The sensational coverage of his case set a precedent for the true crime genre, influencing how such stories are told and consumed. This genre has grown immensely, captivating audiences with its blend of horror and intrigue, and Kemper's story remains a pivotal example within it.